Hey guys, welcome to this episode of The Rachel Cruze Show. Now, if you know me, if you've been watching or listening any amount of time, there's kind of a love for reality TV that I have. It's true. The Bachelor has always been one of those. So the fact that Jason Tartick is here with me on the show today, so pumped.
Thanks for being here. It is so good to be here. Bachelor Nation back in the house.
I know, that's right. I know. I had your significant other, sweet Caitlin Bristow, on years ago, back 2019.
Yeah, it was about 2 years ago.
We were talking.
2.5 years ago.
Yes, we met then, and all of it.
It was funny because when I took her to that episode, and Caitlin's a creative entrepreneur and does great, but finances aren't her forte. So when she was coming into this show, she's like, okay, what should I say about like savings accounts and stuff?
What's a 401k?
Like, I don't know how this works. Help me.
That's so it's
funny. Full circle moment.
I know. It was such a good discussion. But you, I feel like, kind of came onto the scene through the Bachelor world, if you will. So you were on season
14. It was
14.
Becca's season.
Becca's season.
Yeah.
And then you and Caitlin met.
Yes.
How again?
So we met, it was after the show. I was a corporate banker for 10 years. And then after the show, I went right back to work. And there was a big discussion of who's going to be the next Bachelor. And there was discussion about Colton Underwood, Blake Horseman, myself. And they selected Colton Underwood.
Yes.
And so Caitlin came out to Seattle to interview me to say, what's next? Like, what are you going to do now? And ironically enough, what was next was like right in front of me because that's how we met. So the first time we ever met, we have the audio of it, which is wild.
Oh, that's fun.
And 3 months later, we started dating. And 3.5 years later, we're engaged, living in Nashville.
And then it all happened from there.
Exactly.
That's so crazy. Okay, so what caused you to do The Bachelor in the first place?
Yeah, so I was like your corporate guy. Like in the office early, staying late.
Seattle.
Well, I was in New York and then they moved me to Seattle.
Okay.
But that's the kind of guy I was. I was like, you tell me where to go and when, I'll be there. And so they moved me 3,000 miles across the way to Seattle. I knew no one.
How old were you at the time?
I was 29.
Okay.
I was 29 at the time. And I just got to a point where I like kind of hit a wall. I was like, I don't even know myself anymore. I'm like, I'm living my life through my title and what I do and how I do it. I was kind of like depressed. And I get a call to go on The Bachelorette. And it was like the most unconventional, illogical thing to do. My bosses, my peers, my friends, my family were like, no, you have a rocket on your back in corporate America. You're not doing this. Keep going. But I just said, for me, I'm just going to finally do something that I want to do that's against what I like refer to as the blueprint. Totally. And I decided to go on the show.
And you did it.
I did it.
Okay, and how was it overall?
Well, I mean, it's changed my life in every way, right? Like who I'm engaged to and what I do. But it was a wild experience, as you can imagine. But what was really cool about it is it was the first time for 2.5, 3 months, no phone, no TV, no internet.
That's right. They take everything
No
away.
friends, no music, no sports.
Which is like a psychological play,
It
right?
is a psychological play, but it finally allows you to kind of like eliminate so many distractions in your life and focus on you a little bit. And something about that was like weirdly healthy. And I would challenge like anyone even listening to this, try doing that for 12 hours and see how maybe like more connected with yourself you feel. So after 3 months, while I had highs and lows and, weird emotional changes, I was much more like connected with where I was and why.
That is so true though, because I'm like, you just like, and I think even in my line of work, when I talk about people just accumulate stuff, right? Like there's this level of like, I'm just going to upgrade and keep getting. And there gets to a point that it's like, you can have all this stuff and it almost becomes that distraction and this weight.
Totally.
And you can put that in with your cell phone. You could put that in with your social, like you could, that tentacle, I feel like goes so many different directions.
Totally.
And when it's all removed, it really is, it's who you are.
That's it.
That's left. And so that's so fascinating.
Yeah. Crazy.
I love that you learned that on like reality TV.
I know, that's what it took.
So good, I love it.
It's like the most 2022 thing someone could say. A reality television show got my life together.
So funny. So you got how far again at Becca's?
So I came, we joke around, I say I got bronze. I came in third.
You got third.
I got in third, and I got booted off at the dinner table. So it was right before the fantasy suite, which is a blessing. Hindsight.
Yes.
Didn't have to deal with any of that looking back on it, so it's all good.
So what year was that again?
That was 2018.
Okay. So it's a little bit more recent than I was even thinking. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you go from there.
Yep.
And what happens? You go back to baking.
So I go right back. Well, it was Mother's Day, so I flew home to go see my mom. I had to go see Mom, get my head squared away again. And then I went back to work, and it was wild because I'm trying to deal with CFOs that earn, companies that earn over $100 million in revenue.
Totally.
And at the same time, I'm trying to be taken seriously. I'm walking in and like, our admin was like, "Oh, I heard you're the best kisser on this season of Bachelor." I'm like, "Oh my God." So it was this wild world of like managing professional and personal.
You're a banker.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
One of the interesting takeaways from that, though, is there was this sense of like vulnerability that I never showcased at work.
Mm-hmm.
There was a world of my life that I never told anyone. And now that it was like exposed, like, my good, my bad, my family, like everything.
Yeah.
It allowed me to like kind of actually build deeper relationships, which was interesting. But I went back for a year. And what ended up happening is I started some of my side businesses and side hustles. And I got put in this ultimatum, all because of the personal worlds and professional worlds colliding. Something Caitlin said on her podcast. For everyone that knows Caitlin, she's very raw and real with expressing what she's thinking. And so they told me, this is 10 years of work, 7 relocations, 4 promotions, every year exceeded expectations. And they said, either you restart your brand here at work and you have no more side hustle, no more Instagram, you can't do podcasts, you can't do anything else, or go outside the bank and restart what you're going to do. And so that was this ultimatum they put me in. And I actually created a company called Restart on my own to really help people with financial literacy and career navigation. And under that, we've been able to do a lot of things. We have a podcast, we have a networking group, we have a newsletter, we have one book of 2 that's coming out. We've been able to build a pretty cool community with it.
That's so good. So I feel like your story, I'm like, I think a lot of people have had this fork in the road in their life, whether it was the pandemic that changed their career, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But this idea of I'm going to have to change.
Yeah.
And so whether it's how I'm going to change how I'm viewing my money and handling my money, or I'm going to change my career, I'm changing my parenting style, whatever it is, I'm having to change.
Yes.
That change is scary and it's hard.
Yep.
And a level of vulnerability to step into something new can be a rub. And just going to something safe, I feel like a lot of people just default to.
Sure.
So you really took the other fork in the road and you were like, okay, I know the banking world. You could have done corporate America, climbed the ladder.
Yep.
Because you're good at it, obviously. From 29, they're moving you across the country, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about that idea of changing course in your life.
Yeah.
Because it's what you wanted to do. Like,
yes.
What was that like?
No, exactly. And so this book is like an 8-step roadmap for anybody that's trying to make like the most subtle change in their career, like managing a relationship with their boss or negotiating for themselves, or the most material change. But it comes back to a lot of stuff you talk about daily. And I was set up financially to be able to make that, right? Yeah. So if fear will drive complacency, but fear for me was driven by financial independence. And I didn't have any debt. I paid off my MBA, my undergrad debt, and I had a 2-year window where I knew that when I went to Seattle, I knew I had 2 years of diligent budgeting, that if I could do it, I could be in a position to go write my own story, as opposed to what I felt like the last 10 years, my story had been written for me.
Yes.
And so having that flexibility gave me the wherewithal to do it. If I didn't, though, if I did, I know you guys talk a lot about debt management, stuff like that. If I was buried in debt, if I had these things, I would have had no choice but to stay where I was. And the unbelievable opportunity that has come from creating my own thing, it's sometimes I pinch myself. But if I wasn't in a financial position to do so, I'd still be back there doing what it was making me unhappy, having my story written for me and living my identity through my suit, coat, and title.
Yes. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And it is. Money is such a tool to help, I say on the show, create a life that you love, right? It is a tool to help you do those things.
Totally.
And so often that script is flipped where the money just controls us. It controls our life and it tells us what to do versus the opposite. And you did such a great, it's incredible. So you mentioned a couple of things and I was like, diving into the money stuff.
Let's get into it.
You threw in budgeting. Okay.
Yes.
So overall, what would you say? Because I preach it a lot on the show. And I'm like, and listen, and budgeting is a permission to spend.
Yes.
You can do a budget and still enjoy life. This does not mean you can't go on vacation, go out to eat, go shopping, none of that. It just actually is you're being intentional and saying, here's my income and here's the plan for it to make sure I want to do everything I want to do.
Yes.
Do you concur? Do you disagree, Jason? Tell the people out there, what do you think?
I'm on board with you with this one. We are in total agreement. I think you look at inflation right now, right? 7.9%.
Yes.
It is the biggest increase we've seen since January of 1982. And so a year ago, if you didn't budget, it was like, shame on you, but start budgeting. Today, if you're not budgeting, it's not like shame on you. It's like, you must. This isn't more of like a, I want to budget. It's a you need to budget because the consequences of not doing so are so material in the world we live in.
Okay, emergency funds.
Okay, emergency funds.
Savings, having money in the bank, whether it's a money market account, savings account, your safety net.
Yep.
What do you think?
We know that people aren't doing it, which is an issue, right? I think it was like early 2022, 56% of people didn't have $1,000 if an emergency came up. Terrifying, right? And so having what people all have their names. I call it the rainy day fund. And it's like the idea of getting caught outside when it's raining without an umbrella. It's just so important to have that. I think debt management is step one. Rainy day fund is step two. So if you find that you are really focusing on all these new investment opportunities or getting rich quick or really focused on the market, but you have yet to set up a rainy day fund, I think step one is take a pause, go back to your rainy day fund. And then the question is, what should that exist of? If I ask you right now, or someone that's listening, do you know your fixed and variable expenses on a monthly basis or have an idea of the range? The answer you typically get is no. So sit down, look at your last month, understand what your spending is on a variable and fixed basis, and then put in that savings day or put a plan in place to have, there's so many different rules of thumbs out there. I'd say 2 months to an aggressively 10 months. But that stuff is so much more important right now than focusing on, where you're going to get rich quick and how you're going to invest in X, Y, and Z.
Okay, I love that you said that because a lot of people disagree. Because when I talk about the idea of becoming debt-free and getting that emergency fund in place, even before investing, people cringe. And I'm like, it's not that you're never going to invest.
Sure.
Because I love a 401k, Roth IRA, all of it.
Yes.
We want to do that. But if you don't have the short-term in place and something happens, a pandemic or whatever that happens, and you don't have that income, but when you don't owe anyone anything and you have 3 to 6 months in the bank, your life is different. Your options, you have more options. The fear is lowered because your risk is eliminated, all of it. So the idea that I love that you even say having that emergency fund even before that long-term investing, I think is key. And I love that.
I mean, I always like making analogies to money back to things we can relate to. Like March Madness. You see someone's hot. Why they're hot? Because they have momentum, they have confidence, they're hitting every three-pointer. Like the amount of mental stress that you won't have because you have some money there, and talking about opportunity cost of capital, like the fees that are associated with taking out from your 401k and everything else, it's material. I mean, that's material.
I've been saying it, y'all. He's concurring. That's all I'm saying. Okay, let's talk about student loans. You mentioned how you paid off your student loans, which is huge because a lot of people just keep them around, hoping either the government's going to take care of it or they're like, oh, I'm on the 20-year payoff plan. I'm just going to get. What caused you to pay them off?
I'm risk averse to debt. I don't love debt, and I just wanted to get paid off, and that was more of a mental thing. But I accelerated the payment, and I don't love paying interest, so that's what caused me to do it.
Okay. How did it feel after?
Oh, you're like weightless. It's like 1,000 pounds off your chest. And I think we live in a world. I mean, you see price elasticity, right? So this was one of the few things I took away from my MBA.
There you go.
Price goes up. You have to do all these equations to figure out, how it's going to impact demand. But with school, as price continues to go up, demand is going up. It's price inelastic. And as a result of that, people are buried, right? It's on average like $40,000 per person. And so it is just so important at that age. Just think about age 18. You have to raise your hand in high school to go to the bathroom. But in the same age, you're asked to make a huge decision on what you're going to study and how much debt you're going to take out. The big tip I have, I think, for parents or kids that are looking at this stuff is really think about the ROI you'll get on that education where you're going. Because even if you do analytics on private school versus public school, the amount of financial debt that someone is in versus public school versus private school is so material. It's right. And so just making those decisions and really understanding where you're going, why, is so important.
I think it's so key. I'm having a brain around education. And actually looking, because we say it on the show all the time, but I'm like, even when you study millionaires, you study people that have become successful, whatever it is, looking at where they went to school. I mean, you could do all studies around it, but I'm being able to go to something that you can afford. And not always the degree name. People don't always care where you went to school. Now, do certain fields, obviously, you need a degree, all that, absolutely. But being smart about it is what's so key. And the hard thing is people don't think. Or they let their 18-year-old make all the decisions. And they think, okay, sure, this sounds good. Why not? Because you don't know at 18. No one does. So walking through and having the conversation, so key.
Yep.
Love it, Jason.
All right,
so
we're on
fun.
the same page. I love it.
That was so good. Well, thanks for coming by again. I love chatting about obviously money. Love that you have connections with Bachelor too.
Yes.
Always so fun. And your new book is out April
5th. It hits the
April
shelves.
5th. I'm so sorry. April 5th.
Pre-sale now,
And they can get it where?
You get it at Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble. It's all about career navigation. So whether you are trying to make like the smallest adjustment in your career because you have career confusion, or you're trying to make like the most material change of what you're doing and why, it's an 8-step process. And the big thing is that I have seen so much behind the scenes in some of like the offices of these big Wall Street executives, or even like production in an unscripted television show. And the thing is, the thing that happens behind the curtains, there's so much that people are doing when it comes to negotiation, branding, positioning, networking, and it's allowing them to accelerate what they want to do and how they do it and getting their message out there. And so this book is about sharing those experiences with everyone so that they can do it accordingly. And big thing is like write your own story. You only have one career, one opportunity to do it. Like take control of it now if you feel like someone else is.
Yes. Oh, I love it. The Restart Roadmap, you guys, you can pick it up anywhere books are sold. And where can everyone find you?
Yeah, Jason_Tartick.
So
any
fun.
form of social media, that's where I am.
So great. Okay, so one question I always ask my guests is what's one thing you're doing with money that you love right now? It could be something small. It could be something huge.
All right. Well, Rachel and I talked about this before the show. I would say I love it and hate it. I have like a love-hate relationship with this, but it's wedding planning.
Wedding planning. I was like,
Caitlin and I are getting ready for wedding planning. It's a lot of action. We're putting a lot of budgeting and thought towards it, and we're all over it now.
So fun.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Thank you so much.
I'm so excited for you guys. It's awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. All right, you guys, remember, take control of your money and create a life you love.